All right, I'm Olivia Wilde, she, her pronouns.
I'm Megan, she, they.
Hi, my name is Anise, and I use she, her, hers, and we're Hughes Angels.
Amazing. So this week we're talking about Pickup on South Street, and it's about pickpocket Skip McCoy who steals a film strip with classified government formulas on it from Candy, the ex-girlfriend of a communist agent, while the police were tracking her. And then it becomes a race between the communists trying to get the film strip back, the police trying to find the communists, and then Skip attempting to sell that strip for money. And we're going to talk about the politics of the film.
Yes, so I mean, fairly straightforward. The film, I would say, is, or we would say, is pretty anti-communist, and this makes sense for when it was made. It was pretty like the whole like Red Scare and everything, and so the communists are, I would say that, and this goes hand in hand with like the director saying that the whole film's about like marginal people, is that there, I wouldn't say there's any like 100% morally perfect people in the movie, some worse than others, but I would still say despite this, the like communists are positioned as like the antagonists of the film, like just by how the filmmaking is done. Like when I'm trying to think of like concrete examples for this, but you sympathize more with the anti-communists than you do the communists in the film in general.
Yeah, I think like definitely like just because you like just for the duration of the film, you spend a lot more time with the detectives, and like they're always like every like most of the lines they'll say is like like the commies are out, like the commies, something about the commies. So like I think that, and like it's kind of funny, but it's also definitely like serious. And knowing that it was made in 1953, which was like in the McCarthyism era of Red Scare and stuff like that, it does make sense that anti-communist thought is very popular, especially in the US. And I think it's interesting that, or it's not interesting, it just is, I suppose, that the director like claims that it's not a political film, because to me, I feel like it was one of the most political noirs we've watched this semester. And I think it definitely concerns like marginal people, but I wouldn't say, he says nothing more, nothing less, but I would definitely disagree with that.
And I think that maybe like it's not like the film is specifically saying communism bad, but like just it's not, and that might be why the director said that, is because of the way that like it isn't specifically telling you to hate a specific political party the way that some films do, but it definitely, through different filmmaking, it was like even just through the fact that the communist is like, he loses at the end, essentially, like Skip wins in every sense of the word, that alone makes a political statement.
Yeah, I think also like Skip and Mo are really interesting characters because they even though they are seemingly like they are kind of, or at least Mo is working with the police, and but they're also running like their own like way to make money. Like Skip even says like, so you're a red, who cares, your money is as good as anybody else's, and he says that to Candy. So it's even like he doesn't really care, it's kind of just a matter of like he needs to get by and to survive, which is also like kind of it's how him and Mo are both portrayed, of like they've been very much like kind of abandoned by the um you know by American society, and now have to pickpocket and do morally dubious things to survive. So they kind of exist kind of in the middle, because they do make some like pretty like anti-capitalist, or just not like not in support of it, at least like statements throughout the film.
I would say that despite that, like, or in turn, like with that, and kind of despite that, is that like making the likable, the two of the most, in my opinion, most like kind of supportable, likable characters, despite some big issues with Skip particularly. Um they're these sort of like individualist, like support yourself, watch out for yourself, loner types, and I feel like that's a lot closer to like capitalist ideology than communism. And so I feel like that, even if they aren't like explicitly capitalist, it that like liking them for these traits of Mo being like a sort of shifty businesswoman who's like constantly peddling her own side business and stuff. Like these are all sort of like capitalist ideologies, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny because like I think the obvious kind of like maybe not answer, but it like the kind of thing is like the conditions that Mo and Skip have to deal with are a result of a capitalist society. And like when Mo says, like right before she's murdered, I have to go on making a living so I can die. I feel like that was a very like startling statement because that kind of like, I don't know, personally made me reflect a little bit on like capitalism as a whole of just, you know, you're constantly working, trying to make money just so you can, you know, get forward in life. So her character is a little bit like not that she's hypocritical, but just the way she's positioned kind of is because capitalism is what is like kind of keeping her down, but then she is, you know, very much against communism. And even though she's an informant for the police, like she was like when Skip asked her if like she was an informant for the communists, she was like, no, like why would I do that? So it's her positioning is very interesting in the film.
I agree. I think another thing about the film is that while it I would say because it positions communism and communists as like the antagonists, the people on like the good side sort of don't have to be non-criminals. If like they are criminals, they're like, but the morality, the idea of like immorality and criminality aren't interweaved in this film at all. I would say like you don't dislike them for being criminals. Obviously, they're like the best characters, and so I feel like that's different than a lot of film noir, particularly film noir that we've watched. Is that like they sort of have this early like anti-hero character portrayal, which I feel like wasn't in film noir. You see this like anti-hero attitude with a lot of the PIs and stuff, and these like cool swap guys, but I feel it's a lot more like Western as a character archetype of the idea that someone can be like very that you're like explicitly a criminal or like against the law, but also you like them and you support them, and it definitely like the film aligns you with them despite all of this.
Yeah, in terms of that, I think it's like just to go back on the idea of like pickpocketing. We had addressed this before we had started the video, but pickpocketing in the sense of like comparing it to other films, not even film noir, like a lot of the times you see as the person who's doing the pickpocketing doesn't have an option because it's like they're part of like the lower class. They're just part of the lower class in general, and they're like that's like their only, you know, way of getting money or being able to steal those things to sell them. Like in other like plots, that's like where it goes, and so it doesn't have an option. But in like the film noirs that we've had, like they intentionally murder, they intentionally do things that, you know, they have an option to do. And I think that sort of plays into the fact that like why we have sympathy for these characters, because like we associate it with that. And if we didn't live in a capitalist world, then everything would be equal for everybody. And so I think like in that sense, I think that's why we tend to sympathize with these characters way more than, you know, other film noirs.
Yeah, and I think that the way that the film is able to, I'm not sure if this is going to make complete sense, but like simultaneously like show that and still position itself as like anti-communist is it doesn't necessarily show crime as the only option. Like in the diner scene, I remember Mo says to Skip, she's like, you're a smart boy, like start using your head and stop using your hands or whatever. Like it doesn't make it seem like pickpocketing and stuff is Skip's only option. And so I think that if it, and that I feel like that isn't true in real life. Like I feel like that is very much like this sort of self-starter capitalist like idea that like no, it's not your only option. Like if you work hard, you can get ahead in life. Like that sort of propaganda almost.
Yeah, I definitely agree of also like even Mo's like her, you know, kind of front is like selling ties, like, and that is a very like capitalist enterprise, is like selling something for money. So like even that, and like kind of you know, sets up the idea of like this, you know, work hard and you'll make it notion, which is obviously, you know, not something that happens in real life nearly as often as people make it seem like it would. So yeah, I think like the individualism nature of capitalism like definitely is very like pervasive in this film.
Yeah.
And I also yeah, I think just there was so many lines from the police officers that were so like that is really what fueled a lot of like the anti-communism in the film. And also Mo, like she says, "What's the matter with you? Playing footsies with the commies? You waving the flag too?" Like just all these like little like just it's not even dialogue that's necessarily like super integral to the plot, but there's just always this little like um just like something to say to like just say like we don't agree with communism, even if like it's not super important to the plot.
Yeah, I think that oh my god, what was I literally about to say? Yeah, it's definitely a case of like the film doesn't necessarily say the communists are bad, but it aligns you with these people, and these people say that the communists are bad. So, like by association, we're kind of like, oh. And also, Joey sucks. Like I don't like his. He's not. They make him, even though he's not like this sort of petty thief. Skip is for the most part likable. I am having a very trouble. If it wasn't, and I'll say this a gazillion times, if it wasn't for like the beating Candy a lot, I would like Skip. I don't know how no one had an issue with that at the time, but who knows? But
I think that in itself is political.
yes.
That wasn't raised, like, no, that wasn't raised, that didn't raise any questions to anybody. Like, that was just acceptable, behavior.
Yeah. The fact that like it's not even like one of them beats Candy and one of them doesn't. They both beat Candy, and Joey just beats Candy worse. Like he puts her in the hospital, and Skip like comes to like see her. I'm like, he was the first one to like. It's so weird. It's so weird, and it's very strange.
Yeah, we don't normally see that violence in like the past film noirs that we watched. Like we'll see. I know for the paper that I did, I watched Gilda, and in Gilda she does get slapped, but not to the extent that it was in.
Yeah, I feel like there's a difference. Like, I mean, obviously, at the time that a lot of these films were being made, these sort of like casual acts of domestic violence were a lot more like in I remember in Tension, I'm pretty sure he slaps the woman, like stuff like that wasn't really like it's obviously a very big deal, and I'm not saying it's not a big deal. It's just was more normalized in society and in film. This is not that. He is like absolutely beating the crap out of her relentlessly, especially like on the boat or whatever they are, where he like slaps her down there. I'm like, that's an insane amount of violence to be portrayed in a film noir, let alone like against a woman in film in general.
Yeah, I think especially like when you're looking at like so many things that film noirs could not portray on screen because of production codes, and yet like this scene between Joey and Candy where he's like dragging her across a hotel room, like that can be shown.
Yeah.
I think that is also like is very political of like how women are portrayed in these films, and how like Candy is like she's not the like a femme fatale character, and really does not have much agency really at all, despite driving like the central like a big part of the plot. I mean, the beginning of the plot is with her on the subway, so she is like a very integral character, but is not given the agency of the femme fatale archetype.
And I would say for that reason a lot. I mean, personally, I didn't like Candy. I don't find her a very likable character necessarily. And that could be on behalf of the film not giving her agency, and the film also aligning her like with communism and the communists. Although she probably switches at the end because she ends up with Skip, which is so weird. But again, like I'll say again, like I have a very this is a really if it's if one considers it film noir, it's like pushing the boundaries. Like it's definitely not very like within all the boundaries of film noir. But yeah, her character is weird that like you don't really like her because she doesn't have the same, and it's not like that with every female. Like you like Mo, I like Mo, and she's a female character, although it's definitely different in that she's not even remotely sexualized in the same way that Candy is. But it's not that you dislike the film. The film probably doesn't like women. But it's not that the film necessarily dislikes women. It's that like it dislikes Candy and it dislikes communism, and Candy is sort of like in the film the woman of communism or whatever. Like didn't there was a line, right, like Megan, that was when he was talking to her,
like about like her being a communist, and
I thought
like, so you're a red, who cares, your money is as good as anybody else's. Yeah. So like ultimately, yeah, Skip like that also like complicates like his position of, he obviously doesn't really like, he kind of is just in it for the money, which is very capitalist of him, but then also he's like, I don't really care like where that money comes from. So again, it's kind of a gray area for him. And then also like for Mo, and her positioning in the film, like she is really like, I would say she has a relative amount of agency, and yet she is like killed, I think, like if like no less than like halfway like through the film. Like she is not, like I was really surprised. I didn't think she was going to die in that moment, because I was like, no, she has so much more to do and like in this film. But like that was shut down so early. And but like Candy is, and like then Candy is like the only female character for the rest of the film, and kind of at that point is just kind of being tossed around between people because like she just has something they need, but it isn't really like anything to do with like her weaponizing her sexuality or being a very intelligent person like coming with a plan. So she isn't really given like the usual like opportunities of the femme fatale.
Yeah, I think that it's like a very like her and Mo are like the weirdest skew on like the femme fatale versus like the good mother. And that like I'd say Mo definitely has like a very maternal role in a lot of the character, like Skip and Candy, I would say too. Like she's like the guiding maternal character, and Candy, not the femme fatale, but definitely like something. But they are like the weirdest take on that I've seen in any movie.
Would you say so? When I was working on my paper, I actually looked into femme fatales, and I came across this website that said there are two types of women in film noir. There's women who are the femme fatale, and there's women who are in distress in the femme fatale role. So would you consider her to be in distress, or would you consider her to be more of like a femme fatale? Because I was actually genuinely surprised when I looked when I had looked at the list, a lot of film noir movies actually fell under the women being in distress more than the femme fatale role. And so when I had looked into that, it said that there was a projection that these men would project the violence that they were going through onto the women, whereas femme fatales would draw the men into the violence. So it was like a switch. It was like a switch in between roles. And so for me, that's why I think that, she was more a character that was in distress as a femme fatale character, especially because she was constantly be in that manner. But maybe, I don't know. What's your thoughts on it?
I definitely think. Oh, sorry, you start.
I think like it's hard to tell, because I definitely agree that like in past films there's many characters that you could kind of call the femme fatale, but when you look at it, they're not really in as much control as you'd think. But I think Candy, like I think to call her even a femme fatale in distress, I think a little bit, definitely, because she is she is sexualized. She is, I think the femme fatale always like is in the middle of what's going on, and she definitely is. But at the same time, because she has really no agency, and no, like she's not really orchestrating anything. Everything is kind of just like by happenstance, and she's just following like the rules that are set in place. Like she's just doing the delivery, she's just kind of like the middle person and wants nothing to do with the situation. Like she just wants to break up with Joey and like get out of there, but she's just been roped in again. So I think it's hard to tell because she has like a few of the femme fatale characteristics, but I feel like since agency is such a huge part of it, even if it is like that evil agency, I wouldn't say she really has that.
Yeah, and another crucial element of the femme fatale that should be lacking would be like punishment. Like she ends up with Skip, and she gets her like heavy quotations on happy ending, but she isn't. Her and Skip both like neither are punished in the end of the movie, which means like she isn't necessarily trying. Like the film's not trying to show her as evil.
Yeah, and the power leverage between like her and like a regular femme fatale role is like also very much lacking, in the sense that she doesn't really have that much leverage here, whereas in film, like past film noirs, when we look at them, femme fatales have all the leverage. They know everything and more. They know more than the men in the film, and they know more than the audience in the film, and you don't really recognize that to the end. But here, that's sort of like a different story because she doesn't have that leverage.
Yeah, I thought like the end of the film, just now thinking about it, was really like something that that I want to talk about, because I thought it like just the way they kind of like Skip and Candy just like walked off together. Like in my mind, it's almost like now they're gonna go live out this like very like capitalist American dream, like nuclear family type thing, which I thought, like obviously like we would never know, but I think just like the idea of like walking off like into the distance, into the sunset, like I feel like that is a very capitalist thing of like at the end, man and woman, they get together and they're probably going to start a family and like all like that like nuclear family type thing. I don't know if anyone had thoughts about that.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason I have trouble like considering this to be strictly film noir as a movie, is that like, isn't it, what did it say, is like movies either end in marriage or death or something like that. This ended in marriage, which is very bizarre in this. At least it ended in marriage for like the protagonists, which is very strange in this genre, if we can call it such.
No, yeah, I think a lot of this film lies outside the structure of film noir, which is what we've been talking about a lot. And I think that also like contributes to the political aspect of it, of how women are treated in this film, which is not like that much different from other film noirs, but again, like the role of agency really like takes away from that traditional film noir theme, like those traditional themes. And then especially because like, I mean, if you like combine Mo and Candy, you would kind of get like a femme fatale character, but because
Mo has
they're
the agency for sure, in my opinion.
yeah, exactly. So I think like, but because they're separated out, but not to like the femme fatale good girl, like not in that opposition, they're just kind of separated from one person. It kind of each, and especially because Mo dies like halfway through the film, that role is so much different than the other films we've watched.
Yes, I would say it's more of a political statement than a film noir. Like if you consider the ending and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think also just one line that I thought was great was Skip said, "Hey Tiger, leave the taxpayers some money. Don't plant a wire in here because I'll tear it out." So even just like this little like it's just like a witty little statement that he said, but also like is a political statement within itself of like taxpayers are paying for this whole like investigation that's happening, which I think like usually like the outside world is so much like left out of film noir, but in this moment like it's very slight, but it does kind of bring it in of like, oh yes, there's outside people who like kind of are paying for this to be happening, which I think is interesting to think about, and how it like contributes politically.
Well, and at that aspect, it also makes the film very real. Whereas other film noirs, like you can recognize that we're watching a movie, but in that aspect, when you're bringing like political things into a film, it makes it even more real to the audience. It has that like raw connection to things that, oh, well, I can connect to that because now we're talking about politics. And so here's my point of view. And so it allows the audience to have a voice, and it allows the audience to have an opinion, whether it's, you know, against the film or with the film. It's like, whereas film noir, you just watch it to watch it and it's like enjoyment. Whereas this, it's like, okay, well, now you have created, in a way, you've allowed the audience to have an opinion, whether it goes with you or whether it goes against you.
I think that definitely goes with the whole idea of like the film being about marginal people and stuff. Like it's not secluded in the way that a lot of film noir plots are.
Yeah, I think like on the top of like the marginal people, it definitely reminded me of like kind of like the how the other half lives type of thing. Like when Mo says like she's talking about Skip, and where did she say it? Yeah, like that just he has to get by somehow, and like that's what, you know, that's what pickpocketing is for him. Like, and even though she sells him out, she's like, Skip ain't sore, he understands, we live in a different kind of world. So just like her kind of reflecting like the class differences between her and Skip and the police officers, and then also like just like contextualizing of like Skip is not necessarily upset that he like that she sells him out, because he does like understand why, and how like they're both kind of just trying to get by, get money, and if that's the way to do it, then like he would do it too if he had to. So that's also what it made me think of. Okay, do we want to move into our segment? I think we have like 5 or so minutes left.
Sure.
So yeah, so for this segment of Hugh's best friend, we have decided to choose Mo because she really is just an iconic character that, in my opinion, has gone too soon. I wanted to see the rest of her plot and what she was going to bring to the table. If there was going to be new ties, I don't know. Like, is she going to start a new business? I wanted to see it all, but
My piece of Mo made up backstory is, what if she has a kid who like she doesn't like, she has a son who she like doesn't talk to anymore for some reason or something, but like Skip reminds her of him, and that's why she's like so maternal and like protective of like not only him, but I feel like all the like sort of low level criminals of her whole like network, sort of. She's sort of like the mother of all of this, and it's because they all remind her of like her son or something.
yeah, she does kind of act as like this mother figure of like, she's like, I can tell you 8 people who this might be, like when she's negotiating in the beginning with the police. So it kind of shows that she is kind of definitely like running the scene a little bit. And like when she's asking like, oh, was the newspaper folded or was it rolled? Like she knows how these people, like how they do their pickpocketing. So she's definitely like, I think she's like a lot smarter than she lets on. I think a lot of times she's like, oh, I'm just selling my ties, trying to get by, but she knows a whole lot more than what she portrays.
What if she's using those ties as a weapon?
So true. And it easily could have been, if only.
A lot. So maybe she used that to her advantage, because who would suspect ties as a weapon?
Maybe Mo's the femme fatale. maybe she was the femme fatale. What if there was like a whole nother film noir like 30 years prior to this one where she was the femme fatale, but then she got away and she does this now because she like has the agency and she has like the aspect of like knowing everything.
I feel like she had her like femme fatale fall from grace, and now this is like how she operates, because she still has like her front of the tie business, but that's still like how she makes her money. But she obviously knows the inner workings of those crime bubbles, so she has knowledge. I love the idea of like her in the past being a femme fatale.
I think every movie should have a Mo.
Agreed.
She has the knowledge, but where does that knowledge come from? Anybody just like that? She has all this knowledge, but the knowledge has to come from somewhere.
She was meant to be.
I like the
calling.
idea. What if she taught them all how to like pickpocket and shit and stuff? That's why she knows all their techniques. It's because she came up with all of them.
Yeah, that could
And
definitely be it.
What if she gave them all different techniques so she could keep track of who's doing what by keeping up with police reports and stuff?
Yeah, no, definitely. Because then she would know, like, because then she's making it seem like, oh, I just know the tips and tricks. Like but she really is much more powerful in her role.
Exactly.
All right, well, we are at time.
Yes.
So we'll end the video here.